guys, if you're listening, you know who these amazing sixth level leaders are. They are the co-authors. And I would love it, guys, if you could just introduce yourself one by one for the listeners.
I'm Stacy Feiner, and I hail from Cleveland, and I have been working on this project for my whole life.
Hi, I'm Rachel Wallace Andreasen, and I hail from Cuba, Missouri, where I was born and raised.
And I'm Kathy Overbeck, and I also live in Cleveland, and I've been working on this since Stacey invited me in a few years ago.
Awesome. And to give a bit of background on the sixth level book, what was the aha moment which made you think, yes, this book needs to be written?
Well, an aha moment in my mind is probably like the culmination of my life's work. And in 2021, listening yet again to the incredible and ingenious solutions that women leaders were telling me about in their work as their coach, I realized that it was part of a set of themes that I had been listening to and hearing, and they were emerging over the course of my career. And it occurred to me that women lead differently. They have strategies and a lens that really has been untapped, and the book represents this untapped, rich leadership model and framework that really needs to be elevated, taught, and adopted by women and men leaders everywhere over lots of different types of communities, businesses, families, municipalities, and that in fact this leadership model improves sustainability and profitability better than traditional models that we're using today.
Awesome. And if you had to pitch the sixth level to someone who hadn't read the book, wasn't really sure, woman or man, how would you pitch it to them?
Well, I think we called it the sixth level because we really wanted to build on the past history of other leadership models, and this is not a replacement of or better than, it's a move forward. And we've encompassed a lot of models before us to kind of build on the shoulders of what has been in the past. And we picked the name the sixth level because even coming from a rural public school in Missouri, we studied Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And it seemed that it was familiar, and with self-actualization being the fifth level, we wanted to name self and relation the sixth level. And self and relation builds on Dr. Jean Baker Miller's Towards a New Psychology of Women's book that she wrote in the 70s and then was carried on later by other scholars at the Stone Center. Yeah, we wanted the sixth level to resonate and also realize that it is a step beyond, but also a collective step that everybody today is looking for in order to have a new framework for leadership, because leadership can be taught and we want to be able to teach it.
I love that you got inspiration from your school days. And in the UK, we just studied King Henry VIII and his wives. So I divorced, beheaded, died. And then in the US, you're studying things which actually matter, which, yeah, well, that's a different subject in itself. But what do you think women leaders do naturally that the business world has been missing out on?
Oh, that's a great question. Women have been told for centuries that they can't lead businesses because they are too emotional, and that they can't make objective decisions because they are too caring. And so this book dispels those myths. It shows that emotions and the ability to care are very powerful business tools, and they can lead to productivity, profits, and sustainability.
It's definitely that word emotion, I think, which resonates the most. Stacey knows I'm currently in a position at the moment where I'm trying to get on, we call it the property ladder. over here, and I'm actually having to dive back into the sixth level book to kind of activate both parts of my brain, because it's such an emotional decision as well as a objective decision. Do you know what I mean? And it's kind of balancing that two sides. And I think what the sixth level portrays really well, portray is the wrong word, demonstrates well, is that we don't have to let our emotions as women hold us back. We can use them to actually end up making a better decision when it comes to decision making in business and our personal life as well. But it's still really hard.
That really becomes important when there's a crisis or an opportunity that you have to act on very quickly. If you want people to go beyond, above and beyond what they usually would do, then you've got to get them excited and inspired. And you do that through touching their emotions, making that feeling of connection.
I would say that ingenuity is probably one of the things that you're speaking to, Kathy, right now specifically. And that's, ingenuity is defined, it's one of the 4 core differentiators of the model. And it's defined as solving complex problems with novel solutions to serve the interests of many. And traditionally, or typically, we've been taught and encouraged to solve decisions based on the needs of one, or a single issue for the needs of one based on precedent. And that is so distinctly different than the ingenuity that women bring to business, which is, again, solving complex problems with novel solutions for the needs of many. And that is really a fundamental characteristic of women leaders and can be taught to all leaders.
There's so many things that we think about in the linear aspect, that we have this problem, so we solve it here, and then we have this problem and we tackle it here. So we're putting out fires, versus the ability of ingenuity to look at a more of a system-wide basis and put in systematic systems and processes that really do serve the interest of many, that propel organizations forward, but along the way bring the people with them, because you're also using ingenuity in combination with mutuality, the connection that Kathy talked about, and the justness lens that I think women perceivably see, because they have been on the opposite side of justness, and they see it and they feel it in their bones and their spine when something unjust happens, and they're able to call it out. And then all of that leads to this intrinsic motivation of wanting to be part of this thing that's greater than yourself. And when you use those 4 together, there's really no ability to misuse power. And I think that that's what happens in organization, is the misuse of power, or shutting down other voices. But the 4 core differentiators, when used together, eliminates that ability to misuse power, which is so significant in today's environment, and what people, emerging leaders and leaders, are looking for to be able to stay with an organization and feel productive in that organization.
100%, and it's illustrated in the book through the contributors, in all their in all their stories and experiences. What would you say was the contribution which had the biggest impact on you?
We need and needed all of them. And in fact, as we move through city to city on our book tours, we hear more stories that evidence the model. So I don't know.
Well, yeah, picking a contributor story is like picking your favorite child. When other people read the 6th level, they're drawn to the contributor stories because they're all so different, and different organizations, different size organizations, different situations when they came into leadership positions. So I feel like every story resonates in some way. And even everybody has a story. And even if the contributor story is not your story, you can glean ways that contributor used one of the 4 core differentiators to really move the people forward, move the organization forward. So I think it's hard to pick just one, but that is the most compelling part of the book when readers read the book.
And I think one of the biggest challenges for leaders is to address the needs of an individual and the needs of the groups. Often people feel that leaders feel they need to pick one or the other. And these stories demonstrate, or what Rachel's talking about, is you can actually institute ways to care for the individual while you are caring for the whole group.
Yeah, and I will just point, we have the book right here, and if you haven't picked up the book, and there are pages in the book that are colored pages, and they represent the 16 essays, the contributions, the stories that the women contributed to the book, that evidence the model, that evidence the framework. And what is really phenomenal about the stories is that it does demonstrate that this is not prescriptive, right? You can come to this framework with any number of styles or variations to your leadership. It doesn't say how you have to be a leader. It offers you 4 core differentiators that, as Rachel said, when applied together, when applied collectively, create the conditions for healthy social dynamics. So I think the 16 stories just reassure leaders and readers that that everyone can adopt the framework and apply it to their own leadership model, their own leadership style.
100%. And what I did was I just highlighted things. So when you're reading the contributions, you can be like, I can relate with that bit, highlight that. I can learn from that bit, highlight that. Because they all support the same thing, which is, 6th level leadership. So say, for example, we have a listener who is she runs her own small business. So she's selling bits of artwork on Etsy or something like that, or let's just keep it, low key. What one thing can she do to level up her leadership style right now from the principles in the book?
Yeah, I would say like in a sole proprietor business, it's really about how you relate with your customers. What is your brand, since you are the brand in a smaller business, and using the principles of the 6th level to operate how you do business and how you show up for the customers and for the marketplace. And I feel like Stacy said, the contributor stories are real life evidence of what women have done and how they've led, but also like on page 192, there's a whole chart based on the 4 core differentiators of tactics that can be used. And so I think the book is laid out so it goes from history and theory and down to stories and evidence, ultimately to a table that gives you ideas that you could implement in your business based on the size of your company and where you are in your culture. What's not working, and dissect what could I implement to move us closer to a better culture where there's more engagement, less turnover. Because as we know, in this day of AI, talent is getting harder to recruit, and AI and technology will start replacing human positions. So really what is left are leaders that can connect with other humans and lead them in a positive and a proactive and a productive way. And the 6th level really teaches you how to do that.
For the sole proprietor, I think it's important to understand the theory a bit so that you can take many, many different shapes. And the examples show that you can do things that you didn't think were appropriate in business, like Megan Eddings. In her small business, when she really needed energy, she took time out to do TikTok dances. Now, I think most leaders, especially of a sole proprietor, would be afraid to do something like that because it would lose their authority. But you can, and what she learned was by taking that time out, it, first of all, was a bonding opportunity, so people were energized just by being with each other. and the activity generated energy rather than depleting energy. So that's what the kinds of things that a sole proprietor can get out of this book by understanding the theory that women's strength and their power is through connection and caring.
But the beauty is that it also applies to organizations that have 500 employees or thousands of employees, and we have examples of those too. And so I feel like it does go through the gamut. And even our two emerging leader stories, Sam Allen's one of the emerging leaders, and after he graduated college, he's now writing a dissertation and examples from the 6th level. So I feel like whether you're starting out thinking about how you want to lead, or you're already in a position of leadership and you're struggling because you're depleted all the time because you have these constant problems, it really is applicable to many phases of leadership of where a person might be on that journey.
100%. And I think sometimes, like you just said, we can feel depleted and unmotivated and overwhelmed. But actually, what the 6th level teaches you is that all of those things that you're feeling are a strength, because emotion and feeling things deeply is never a weakness, and it makes you a better leader, which is why the book makes so much sense if you're CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, or just have your own small business that you do as a side hustle. It all makes sense.
There's so many myths. There are so many false narratives about leadership and about successful leadership and about women's contribution. I mean, right now, most of the traditional theories and models and disciplines are using research that were done predominantly by male researchers on male subjects, which is wonderful. Now we have a great deal of research to develop and add women's lens to that research so that we can have a more expansive, a more well-rounded, and a better representation of how we can move teams and communities forward with this lens of women's psychology. So, for example, one of the false narratives is that we should leave emotions out of the boardroom. And we kind of think that the anger or the frustration or the assertions that are happening in board meetings are not emotional, when in fact all of those interactions are based on emotion. So there's plenty of emotion in the boardroom. So what we're saying is we would really like to recognize that women's ability to engage in mutual empathy, to see each other and to recognize that we need to respect each other and be civil with each other, which is the ability to care. The ethic of care is so essential in the model. Probably the biggest differentiator in the leadership model that we're presenting is that women psychology teaches us how to demonstrate and deliver and engage with the ethic of care, and to shape communities based on the ethic of care.
What's been acceptable is this expression of dominance, and as Stacey just said, and it is seen as it's not an emotion, but of course that's an emotion, and it's an accepted emotion in the boardroom and in business. And the book shows that that's not necessary, and it can be counterproductive.
The book and the model is to help organizations move towards the ethic of care and leave command and control, leave dominance behind. Because actually dominance does undermine the capabilities of an organization to be sustainable and have higher profitability.
Yeah, it undermines, and it also puts people under so much pressure, thinking the only way to be successful is to be brutal, to work harder, to cut people at their knees, to how dangerous is it that that's what's taught? To be successful in business, you have to basically remove yourself from any kind of empathy to get to the top. And it
Yes.
doesn't make any sense, because a lot of people can't do that. So they end up making these decisions which don't sit right with them, but they think, well, I'm doing it for my career. I'm doing it for a raise. I have to be like this to be successful. And that will trickle into people's quality of life, and people will just feel bad. They'll just have a gut feeling that, yeah, I'm just not happy. Like, it just doesn't feel right. And the Sixth Level completely turns that on its head. And that's why it's such a powerful book, which makes so much sense, because you can actually move further, you can get further, you can have more success by basically being a nicer person. Do you know what I mean? Like, basically not seeing things that are portrayed in society, in business especially, as weaknesses, using them as strengths. And I think so many people will actually feel this immense sense of relief after they've read the book. Like, I don't have to be an asshole. Do you know what I mean? Because I feel
Maybe that
passionately
should be our
about this.
subtitle. I don't have to be an asshole.
That's a good one.
Because I feel passionately about this and have an opinion, that doesn't make me too much. That doesn't make me an inconvenience. And I know me and Jack touched on this as well in the last episode. You know, we can sometimes feel an inconvenience for feeling these very normal and actually productive emotions. And the Sixth Level really just smashes straight through that, and it brings a lot of clarity to how women may feel. Just sometimes even understanding that you're not the problem can shift such a ceiling of feeling. Yeah, hopefully that makes sense to everyone listening. And that's really illustrated throughout the contributions on how productivity, revenue actually tripled and became so much more successful when the principles were being used and people were being cared for and valued in the right way, not the terrifying kind of ball-breaking way, which is old news now. The world needs to move on from that. If you could predict the future of women leadership 10 years from now, do you see any changes coming?
It's a great question, because I think, society tends to push back when marginalized people start to take center stage. And I think that we are entering that period right now. So we might be experiencing some pushback within the next few years, but 10 years out, I think we'll be back. I think that you can't avoid this kind of leadership. You need it, especially now with technology, because you can't work independently because change is happening so quickly. You need to be able to collaborate, and to collaborate, you need to feel valued within a group. So yes, the women's style, I think, is going to dominate, or shouldn't use that expression. Women's style is going to be appreciated.
I really do appreciate Kathy's point about how the system, the wider, broader system, pushes back on change, on growth, on this notion that we can move beyond dominance to collaboration. And we are in the midst of it right now. The polarization in the United States, the polarization in the world is really it's really a fight for maintaining dominance or moving towards the ethic of care. And, this is a tough word to use, but it is the right word to use, that patriarchy is a system that creates a false dichotomy and creates norms, invisible norms that persist, that we could all say we don't like. I mean, the whole world is saying we want something better, right? So what is that better? And how do we discover that better so that it works for everyone? when you talk about what's the next 10 years, if we think about where women are, I mean, Kathy talks about this point really well, that we finally have data of women's leadership that we haven't had before because we didn't have enough women in leadership positions to really accumulate, analysis of how women lead with enough data. But as we're moving forward as well, as there are more women graduating from college, right? There are more women entering into the workforce with the training and the preparation to be leaders of the future. And so I think that's really important. There are lots of statistics like that are really important that would lead us to imagine and envision that the world in 10 years will be, that there will be an effort to make the world a better place for everyone using the ethic of care and learning from women.
Well, I would just say, the 6th level is for all leaders. And the level of dominance has served no one well. It hasn't served men well or women well. And I would say that, dominance has not served anyone well. And everyone is looking for a new framework, a new way that we can move forward together. Because men and women have been hurt by the patriarch system that, Stacey referred to. But we also know we're evolving, and I think it came out in your podcast with Jack, that men, we're really focused on 3 P's, procreation, protection, and providing. And that has changed. We can see the newest generation that's, becoming parents, parenting versus just being in historical, socialized norm roles that we're taught to be in. But what I love about the 6th level is it really does provide a pathway for every leader to move forward to, because it is based on women's social psychology, but it applies to everyone. And just as women have learned from men all of these years, now there's a chance for men to really listen and think and learn from how women do toggle, naturally between the emotion and the analytic, and how we do naturally bring these 4 core differentiators forward. And it's not just for women, and not all women can do it, but some men are already doing it. So what the 6th level does is it boils it down as a framework for all leaders and their core principles that are very big umbrellas about how to lead a culture forward. And that's what really makes the 6th level special.
Yeah, to echo that the 4 core differentiators evolve the ethic of care, and the ethic of care creates the conditions in communities for healthy social dynamics. So that communities can move forward together. And I think, just to echo again what we've said, is that it leaves command and control behind. It eliminates the chance of self-interest. That there's an agreement. The one of the core differentiators is justness, and justness is a community's agreement to use power in the service of the whole, not in the service of the individual. And so that's really very fundamental to healthy communities, is that there can be fair representation, all voices can be heard and represented in decisions. And back to Rachel's point, is that decisions get made not linearly one by one, but collectively, looking at the whole system, taking time to look at how the ripple effect of one decision might impact many, and making sure that your decisions at the beginning have that many in mind, not just the one.
Yeah, and I just went to a class yesterday, and we talked about allyship, and we talked about, DEI or DEIB, as organizational directives. But DEI has been successful in some organizations, but it has not been successful in others. And then I'm sitting back thinking, why is it not successful? It makes sense. We want diversity. We want inclusion. We want equity. We want there to be a level playing field so everyone has an opportunity. But why has it not been successful in a lot of organizations? And I do believe because there are not the principles of behavior. We're not teaching people how to treat each other, but that is what the sixth level does, is it gives you the examples of how to treat other people and how to be inclusive. And it's really comes down to the 4 core differentiators. So when you know how to have interactions with people, then even initiatives like DEI can flourish within organizations.
The sixth level, the model, the 4 core differentiators, are, again, create fair and just social dynamics. So essentially, applying it to any organization, applying it to any movement, applying it to any business that wants to have sustainability and have profitability, and have well-being and quality of life, and consumers to buy other products, right? For the economy to flourish, the 4 core differentiators and the 6th level are essential for bringing communities together so that they can be sustainable and prosper.
So many programs have not worked because it doesn't get down to the behavior level. It teaches the concept, the thought, the law, but it doesn't teach how to think about and how to care about people, how to behave.
Yeah.
We could say that about a lot of things. We could say that about the climate change movement, that we want climate change. But if we don't change some of the problems that create climate change, like the mentality that we can take from the earth with insatiably, then it's very hard to make changes in that movement. So every movement really that is going to be successful needs to shift from dominance to the ethic of care. And that's essentially what we're saying. Communities need to be built on the ethic of care for sustainability, right? Because people keep your companies going. But also profitability. And I think people could say, well, we've been profitable, it's been working. The patriarchy has been working. We have an economy that's working. Or that's profitable. It's an engine, but it's depletive, and it serves some better than others. And it actually has served nobody, because if you look at the statistics, men in this system are suffering, and women are suffering. Old are suffering, and the young are suffering. And we leave not great things for the next generation. So the next generation, not yet born, is suffering.
Let's move on to more of you guys individually. What was something that you learned about each other whilst working together, co-authoring the book?
Well, I think collectively, just my experience was we worked very intensely. We wrote the book together. We interpreted data together and related to our contributors. We brought our own experiences, and we generated a new model, really an advancement to leadership as we know it. I think what I was most impressed with was we learned the 6th level as we were writing the book. We learned the model, and we became intimate with the model because we had to practice it while we were writing it.
We should write a book about the process of writing this book, because so many people say, how do 4 people write a book together? And you've heard the old saying about a committee cannot produce anything worthwhile. And I think it's because we all believe in the ethic of care and all the things that we were writing about, that we cared about not only each other, but each other's ideas. I think we wanted to make each other feel valued. And I don't want to say that it was always a smooth process, because I think it's really important to say, if you practice the 6th level, everything's going to be perfect. It's not a panacea. It is a framework, as Stacey has said. And we would have to go back to that framework and think about, how do we get past this moment where we're not agreeing?
Yeah, I would say the whole process of writing the book was the model of the 6th level. And not only did we have the 4 contributors, 2 emerging leaders, and 16 contributors, that was all a coordination process. But like Kathy's saying, being a leader is just not, you don't just adopt the 6th level and just move straight down the path and everybody falls in line. It is 2 steps forward, 1 step back, reflect, redirect, and, pull people back into this, into the team. So even the stories of our contributors in the book, even though they may be 6th level leaders and wearing that hat every day, they still have to work hard to redirect and to remind and to set the vision again and to have the alignment, because it's constant work to be a leader. It's just refreshing and feels great to be on the path of the 6th level versus a path of dominance that never gets better. So when you're leading down the path of the 6th level, the path of ethic of care, you have all these surprising moments along the way. And that's what we got when we wrote the book of the 6th level. All of these inspirational moments because we were putting the 6th level into practice.
Right.
A system without the 6th level could feel depletive. I mean, it's just, you can also say that it's generative when you're practicing
Yes.
the 6th level.
Yeah.
And you're
It's
right,
generative.
there were so many surprising moments that occurred as an outgrowth of practicing the 6th level that we weren't necessarily anticipating.
Right.
And
Yeah.
well, I was going to say, and how many times have we heard Jack say, "Oh my God, like I'm working with you all and I never knew that work could be this way." So, I think that was a surprise too, is just, how women do lead and this collaboration. I think that that's what stuck out, is the collaboration amongst not only everyone that participated in the book, but even all of the people that wrote testimonials for us and the number of people we connected with, on LinkedIn and did a Zoom with, and that, the outreach of how the 6th level has touched them and that collaboration that we just kept bringing people into the fold.
Yeah, there was one
I love
event
that
we
so
went
much.
to, we were presenting to a group of 10 public company women executives. And as we talked about the 6th level, one woman at the end of the table said, "I love the 6th level book. I loved reading it because I show up at work every day and get criticized for my approach. But now I have the words of this model that I can say, no, I'm practicing this model, and this is why I'm successful, and this is why I should be getting,
Credit for it.
credit." And a woman at the other end of the table said, "God, I love reading the 6th level. I love the model because everybody loves my leadership, but nobody knows what to call it. They just think it's kind of random. But now I can claim language and words for it." So I think that's been one of the, if you ask the question, what's been the most remarkable learning experience in the whole thing, it's how it resonates with everyone who has spent the time reading it. There was one story where somebody, a man said, I can't wait. I love what you're saying about the book. I'm going to buy 5 books and I'm going to give it to the women in my life. And I think Rachel said, "You want to tell the story?" Yeah. And Rachel said, "That's so funny. I read Malcolm Gladwell and John Maxwell, and I never thought to myself, boy, I don't need to read this book because it's written for and about men."
Yeah.
So I think what we also learned is that we really don't have a culture right now that believes that reading the stories and the experience and the approach of women can be something that can be learned. And what we're finding is it's missing from the theories. And it is so relevant now because it's been missing, and some of the demise that we're experiencing is because women's lens is missing.
Yeah.
So it was remarkable to see how it resonates with so many people.
So, Gemma, let me ask you and your listeners, when do you feel energized when you're at work? What energizes you? Most people say it's when somebody took an interest in me, somebody cared about helping me advance. And that's what the sixth level is all about, is helping, valuing people's ability to contribute and helping them do that.
100%.
Well, we haven't talked about
I
the
think
intrinsic motivation. And intrinsic motivation is the ability to go beyond one's own self-interest to support and evolve the outcomes that serve and benefit many, the whole community, so that you don't have to look out for yourself because you have a whole community of people looking out for you. So you spend all of your time being focused on elevating the community because you know that everybody else is doing the same thing, so we all elevate together.
giving credit where credit's due, like that should be such a bigger thing than I think it is nowadays. I think people set themselves a goal, they achieve it, and then they think, oh, okay, next goal. And they're almost embarrassed to kind of celebrate. But I think, that's something that people can really do in their businesses as well. Like, celebrate the wins, no matter how big or how small, in the business and also in their personal life as well. It allows workers and employees to feel like they're part of something bigger than just what they get paid to do. If your colleagues have an interest in your personal life. And it is all in the book. So anyone listening, please go pick yourself up a copy. It's not just for leaders. It's applicable if you are working for someone else as well. It's really not just for business owners, because some people don't want to start a business. They don't want that responsibility, and that is totally fine. But you can still read the book and gain something from it. I promise you.
Well, I just think, to your point, I think a big myth is that leadership cannot be learned. And I do think, just like you said, even if you don't want to be in a leadership position, you can read the book and see, like as a litmus test, how a culture you might want to work for actually could operate based on the contributor stories. And so I feel like it is applicable because, going back to your question about what could the vision be in 10 years? And, what if everyone did operate at the sixth level? What if everyone is going to have a different opinion? But what if we truly could listen and value and find the common ground for where we're going? And I think the sixth level provides the framework on how to find the common ground, how to value each other's opinion, how to move forward together in a productive and sustainable way.
100%. And I always say, a job interview is a 50-50 process. It's not you turning up and hoping to be picked. It's kind of you turning up and deciding whether you want to work for this company or not. It's just as much for you than it is the employer. And I think if you're maybe about to go into a few job interviews, reading the sixth level can help you make that decision on, is this the type of company that I want to work for? And you could read the book as actually interview prep to maybe kind of phrase some questions, and you'll get a strong idea whether this company is operating at a sixth level, and knowledge is power. And I think that's why you're completely right. It's really, this book really isn't just for leaders. Don't let sixth leaders put you off, the title. It's more than applicable for you if you are, for the company you work for, or if you're looking for a change. Because sometimes you could try and encourage your current place of work to adopt more sixth level principles. And you know what? It might not work. It might not happen. They might be so set in their ways and, not be open to change. And that's fine. But I think everyone deserves to be in a working environment where they feel appreciated and equal. And yeah, that's why the sixth level makes so much sense. So thank you, ladies.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thank you,
Gemma,
Gemma. You really created
Yeah,
the conditions for success.
for a great
great.
conversation.
Awesome.